So real quick, this video is in court. I mean, this is connected to the last video, and pretty much it's about social justice and how it's destroying our kids' education. Um, this you'll see an example here is math. How they're saying math is racist. Social justice destruction. It is the destruction. That's all it is, and it'll come first to the black because the blacks are embracing it, right? Because it's masquerading as the new civil rights, even though it rejects the old civil rights. Um, but it'll come to the black first. Social justice destruction will come to the black first and to the white second because it's all about equity and equality of outcome. So, what they're going to do is they're going to make whites come back down here where blacks are. They're not going to raise blacks up. They're going to keep blacks down here. It's not redistribution of wealth where one side goes up and the other side goes down. No, this is where they bring one side down, but they keep making promises over here. And like you might even get reparations, but I mean it might help you for a little while, but unless you spend the money correctly, it's not going to matter. You're just going to spend the money. And at this point, with all the stimulus stuff and then the inflation that's coming, like even if they give you all that money, it ain't gonna mean nothing. But it might. I'm just saying. It depends on how you spend it. But again, so this is it's destruction to the black first and then to the white, right? And so I could tell you that these woke elites, which are like the black ones, and fueling the flames, pushing the white Marxist agenda, right? Because I mean, they're house slaves. They're basically they're preparing the y'all for the fields. They're trying to get you to want to work the fields, which it's not going to look like working the fields. What it's going to look like first, it's going to look like free housing. They're all like look. Y'all niggas get a free house. You get to live here for free. Like, lay your head down. You know, we take care of it. Like, free house, right? And then that's how, like, you don't, and then we'll give you a check for free. You don't got to worry about nothing, right? And then once the money runs out, what happens once they achieve what they want and you give up your rights, you give up your firearms, you give up all that stuff, what happens? They shut the door, and then all of a sudden you got to work the field, son. You gotta struggle and dig for food out of the trash can. I mean, when you dealing with the devil, like you better believe that he gets the better end of the deal every single time, and that he don't gotta keep his promise. He can give you a variation of what he promised, or he'll find a way to keep his promise in a way that is detrimental to you every single time because the devil does hate you. And that's the thing, is that if you look at how the white liberals, if you look at the video, I think it's the China video that I have, that you can see how white liberals actually feel about blacks. They think we're dumb. We think we're not able to do stuff. You know, that's what this whole social justice thing is. But then you have these strong black women black gay women taking up the cause for for the race. Do it for the culture. And they out here, spewing all this garbage. But I mean, some of them are even talking about like pushing abortion. Like, how you gonna grow a nation, or a part of a nation, or how you gonna grow the black community and push abortion and kill and push the murder of black babies? Like, no, that's not how you grow in numbers. You should, and then also talking about the family, right? Talking about going against the idea of a nuclear family. No. You should be pushing the idea of a nuclear family. You should be pushing the idea of getting married, not having kids till you get married, graduating high school, an actual good education, not a social justice education, but an education that teaches you math, reading, all the basics, and then also advanced in the careers where that stuff, you need to know that stuff. Like, but they don't. That's not what they're trying to push. They're pushing the opposite, the thing that destroys the family. They're pushing homosexuality, in the music big time. Like there's a lot of yeah, and promiscuity for the women, and then single motherhood. Because they say the village can raise a child. Like it takes a village to raise a child. Like no, it takes a father and a mother to raise a child. That's the foundation you need from the start. But I digress. Please enjoy the video and like and subscribe. Probably the next video I'll have a few shirt campaigns that I'll have going, and you can I'll put them down in the description. And you can, by buying the shirt, you can donate to different causes. I'll make them different. Because I actually would like to get money and actually create a school in my city, for especially for black kids. But it's going to be one where you have to pay, or by people's donations, you'll be able to go there because it'll pay for your entrance. But at the same time, you got to behave. If you don't behave, if you don't go by the rules, and you have to continue this, you're going to get kicked out. And hopefully the parents are on it, because they're going to waste an education. Because I'm not having a school where people are running amok. No, people who want to be there and want to learn, like I'll pay for your education all day long. Like I'll help you get there, you know what I'm saying, or I'll pay half. But as soon as you stop, like no. I'm going to get you away from those kids, the other kids that do want to learn, and they're going to move forward, and they're going to be the successful ones in the community. They're going to be the leaders of the community. But shalom, and have a good one. Compete for the status of most woke at education reform conferences. At one such conference held by the Standards Institute in 2018, the CEO of Unbound Ed received applause for telling the audience, if you are under the impression that there are good white people and bad white people, you are wrong. The speaker exhorted the audience to recognize that they were part of a systematically racist system of education.
So the critical race theory is a framework for understanding the world that helps us understand that this entire country is racist, right? We have a white supremacist racial caste system in the United States.
Wait. Can you just stop for one second?
Right?
Are you saying that all white people in America are racist?
Yeah, I am too. Sometimes it happens. We were socialized, right? The process of socialization and learning about social norms.
So you're
racist.
Happened. You're a racist.
Occasionally it happens.
How?
I usually apologize it when I realize it.
How are you a racist? What do you think makes you superior?
Jesse, that question doesn't make sense.
Well, isn't racism the belief that one race is inherently superior than another race, and then you discriminate against other races?
That is a piece of racism, but you gave a definition that's really old. And language evolves over time.
Okay,
and race and white supremacy, what are race and white supremacy today?
Yeah, okay.
They are structures that affect us all. So people do things that are racist all the time, myself included, because we don't realize that's happening.
Okay,
like
and that the mission of the education reform was to disrupt patterns of implicit bias, privilege, and racism in ourselves and in the education field.
Explain how math is racist. I still haven't really understood the premise from you.
Well, the first premise, the first starting point that we have to get on the same page on is that we live in a white supremacist racial caste system.
Okay, I'm not willing
to
agree with that. No, I disagree with that. But just explain, because we're running out of time, Doctor. How is 2 + 2 = 4? How does that discriminate against black people or brown people?
1 stick + 2 stick. Humans were like, hey, here's a stick, here's another. I just did some math. That was not racist. We're on the same page with that?
Okay.
1 + 1 = 2?
Yes.
Okay. Humans have then used math and numbers and statistics in all sorts of ways, from counting black and brown bodies as they made them property and brought them over to these lands, to more recently, scholars who said that white people were more intelligent than people of color. That's called scientific racism, the use of statistics and tools to construct the idea. It's like something deep in our brains. It's hard to recognize, and that's why it requires time, Jesse. I asked your question,
well, just
and it
because
took me
people
more than
counted
3 years to get here.
With slavery, does it make counting racist? You understand? Something could be related to each other, but not a causation. You understand what I mean?
Do you understand what statistics is?
I think I do. I'm not understanding, though, if you understand. That's the point. Doctor,
so the whole thing is as phony as the $3 bill.
In Intellectuals and Race, you cite an observation by the intelligence expert, IQ scientist James Flynn, that just stopped me cold. After the Second World War, you've got large numbers of American troops remaining in Germany. For that matter, there's still several tens of thousands there today. And both black and white American soldiers had children with German women. And Flynn discovered that those children growing up in Germany showed no IQ differences at all. The black kids and the white kids, the same. Professor Flynn concluded that the reason was that the offspring of black soldiers in Germany grew up in a nation with no black subculture, close quote. Which means what? Which means they experienced exactly the same expectations. Is this
No, the expectations are external. The culture in which they grew up was not the culture in which black kids grew up in America today.
So they had...
There's no gangster rap that was pervasively available in Germany.
So here's what I'm getting. There is something about black subculture in America today that holds African Americans themselves back?
Yes. Because that very same subculture held whites in the South back as well. That in the time this mental testing in the First World War turned up, among other things, the fact that whites from various 4 or 5 southern states scored lower on the mental test than blacks from 4 or 5 northern states. And so it really was a question of the subculture that was there, which was a handicap to both.
A decade earlier, education reformers had viewed the radical achievement gap as evidence of serious societal problems that their policy ideas could ameliorate. But as their prescriptions failed, their diagnosis shifted. All racial gaps were now evidence of institutional racism in schools and implicit bias.
Get this story. The Oregon Department of Education promoting a training program for teachers that seeks to undo racism in math. The Pathway to Equitable Math Instruction Toolkit explains how white supremacy allegedly infiltrates math classrooms, arguing the concept of mathematics being purely objective is unequivocally false, meaning 2 + 2 does not equal 4, and teaching it is even much less so. Upholding the idea that there are always right and wrong answers perpetuate objectivity as well as fear of open conflict. I'm exhausted. Here to react, former Vanderbilt University professor Dr. Carol Swain. Doctor, help me. History, politics, social studies, I get you can have debates. Math, help me here.
I have a question. I wonder if those Board of Education members would want their own children taught that 2.2 = 9. And the problem with that racism is that it ensures that minority youth that are taught by teachers who follow that curriculum will be turning out students who can never be mathematicians, they can never be scientists, they can never be engineers or pharmacists, because engineering requires mathematical precision, otherwise buildings and bridges collapse. Pharmacists, if they don't understand math, they would kill patients because they'd never be able to fill the prescriptions. And so it is lunacy of the political left. And so I would...
Math. This is the Connected Math Guidebook. This book is used throughout the United States of America. It's not in every single classroom. It's for grades 6 through 8 that this teaches mathematics. It uses what they call a standards-based principle, which means we have certain standards, but we don't teach facts. In fact, because this curriculum does not emphasize the arithmetic computation done by hand, some connected math project students may not do well on tests assessing computational skills. In other words, I'm going to go do math and I don't know how to compute. Well, that's what they're being taught, and that comes right out of the teacher's manual. We believe such a trade-off in favor of CMP is very much to the student's advantage in the world of work. But if you think that's troubling, read what's on page 17. Standard 3. I'll take it right out of the book. Page 17. Through discussing problems and their solutions, students learn to reason. They learn that mathematics is man-made, that it is arbitrary, and good solutions are arrived at by consensus among those who are considered expert. So we no longer can just say that, hey, 3 times 3 is, well, we don't know, because it's a consensus. Your children are being taught consensus. More and more through society, you're going to hear this term consensus pop up. Have you heard about the idea that there's a consensus that there's man-made global warming?
Yes.
There is no such thing in science. As I said, my friend is a scientist. They don't do consensus. They do facts, and you either prove them or you disprove them. And if you prove them, then you go on to become a hypothesis. And if that sticks, then it becomes a theory one day. Did you ever hear of the hypothesis of anthropogenic global warming? There was no such thing. It just became a theory overnight, and suddenly it had the same status as a theory of relativity. How did that happen? It happened through the notion that consensus was okay, and we put it everywhere. And that's what your children are being taught in school. Consensus. Math is arbitrary. Now, there are people fighting back trying to get...
From teachers, the education reform movement new goal was to fix the problem of biased teachers. This was a fraught mission for education. Reformers who believed that they were, according to a much lauded internal review of the movement conducted by Promise 54, tainted by a white dominant culture and its systems, structures, stories, rituals, and behaviors. Yet somehow they convinced themselves, and more importantly, their funders, that with they could fix the problem of racially biased teachers once and for all. And naturally, anyone who questioned them or their policies must, whether that person realized it or not, be motivated by racial bias. The term corporate reformers no longer seemed adequate to describe what this movement had become. A social justice industrial complex had taken hold of American education. Former Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, impressed by DCPS's apparent gains, used money from the 2009 stimulus bill to incentivize, some might say bribe, states to follow DCPS's policy, lead on test-based teacher evaluations, and the new and much hated Common Core academic standards. With those policy levers and incentives in place, and with ever more money flowing to woke conferences and training programs, school district leaders across the county have learned that the fastest path to career advancement is to fake statistical progress for minority students while passionately decrying privilege and institutional racism.